Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. This is our Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month program. I welcome each and every one of you, including all of our employees at our regional, field, satellite, and area offices who are watching by FDIC TV, the VTC, or through our audio conferencing system. We thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in today's program, and we welcome you to continue to participate in all of the educational series that we offer. I want to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Lee Moon Hwa, for accepting our invitation to be here today. And like I said already, he has initiated some interest and excitement in what is to come. This May marks the 165th anniversary of the arrival of the first Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders on the shores of this country. Asians of Chinese descent came to the United States during the gold rush of 1849 to seek their fortune in California, and since then, countless Asian American and Pacific Islanders have immigrated here. Today, we honor the memory and courage of all of those brave Asian American and Pacific Islanders and of the generations that have subsequently followed. Because of their countless sacrifices and dreams of a better life for themselves and their children, we celebrate the many contributions and achievements that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have made to this country. As we know, the diversity of this country is what makes us strong. Despite the history of adversity in the United States, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community has grown and thrived. Today, many role models from this group are represented in our national leadership roles, business, education, arts, industry, and sports, while many more have succeeded economically due to their focus on hard work and education. In President Obama's proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month for 2012, he addresses the rededicating ourselves to making our nation a place that welcomes the contributions of all people, all colors, all creeds, and ensures the American dream is within the reach of all who seek it. He also discusses how generations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have helped make this country what it is today. Moreover, the President calls upon all of us to visit the Asian American Pacific Heritage.gov website to learn more about the history of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and to participate in other programs and activities in your communities. So I hope you will take the time to continue your learning experience to educate yourselves about the diversity of the country because, as I said, it makes us who we are. At this time, I'd like to welcome Craig Jarville, Director of the Division of Finance, who will make opening remarks and introduce our guest speaker. Please welcome Mr. Jarville.
Thank you, Melody. And good afternoon, everyone, or morning. What is it? It is an honor to be here to take part today in our recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and introduce our featured speaker. As Melody also did, I want to welcome everybody here. Thank you for coming, and welcome everybody across the country who are viewing it in our various offices. American Pacific American Heritage Month has been officially celebrated in the U.S. for more than a quarter century. Officially proclaimed Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month by President Obama in his first and subsequent annual proclamations, this observance is a celebration of the culture, traditions, and history of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the U.S. During this month, we recognize the millions of Asian American and Pacific Islanders whose love of family, community, and hard work have helped define us as a nation. This year's theme, Striving for Excellence in Leadership, Diversity, and Inclusion, was chosen by the Federal Asian Pacific American Council to highlight the President's executive order signed in August of 2011 to establish a government-wide coordinated initiative to promote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. The executive order further directs agencies to develop and implement a more comprehensive, integrated, and strategic focus on diversity and inclusion as a component of our human resources strategies. Asian American and Pacific Islanders are sometimes referred to as the model minority. However, while it may be easy to presume that all is well with the members of this group, like Americans of other backgrounds, Asian Americans have also suffered tragedies and have had to work hard to get to where they are today. From pioneers like Dr. Connie Mariano, the first female director of the White House Medical Unit, to Jacqueline Nguyen, the first Vietnamese American woman to serve on the federal bench, and to, Ken, this is the name I really have a hard time with, Ken Niumatalolo, who is the first American Samoan head coach, and he's up the road at the Naval Academy. Also, there's, of course, Connie Chung, who we're all familiar with, the first Asian American to be a nightly news anchor for a major network. And one I just learned this week, Amar Bose, who many of you may not be familiar, but he's an electrical engineer and founder of the Bose Corporation. I'm sure some of us, I know I have a couple products from the Bose Corporation in my house. Anyway, Asian American and Pacific Islanders have immersed themselves in every aspect of American life. The history of Asian American and Pacific Islander communities in the U.S. is intertwined with our national identity and American pride. These communities continue to invest in the economic future and prosperity of our country and contribute to the American national character. In closing, given the many causes and commemorative months that fill the U.S. calendar, some may question the merit of annual celebrations of group observances such as this one. However, without them, many of us would not think about, we would not be knowledgeable of, the contributions that various groups make to this nation. Additionally, we would remain uninformed about the struggles that various groups have had to endure to live the American dream. Now, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our distinguished speaker for today's program, Mr. Lê Mun Hoa. Mr. Lê Mun Hoa is an internationally renowned Chinese-American documentary filmmaker, author, poet, educator, Asian folkteller, community therapist, and master diversity trainer. He is currently the executive director of Stirfry Seminars and Consulting, a diversity training company that provides educational tools and workshops on issues pertaining to cross-cultural communication and awareness, mindful facilitation, and conflict mediation techniques. Many of the top 500 companies in the U.S. are clients of his company. He is also the author of several books. His first film, Stolen Ground, was released in 1993 and won the San Francisco International Film Festival's Certificate of Merit Award for Best Bay Area Documentary. His second and most famous film, The Color of Fear, won the National Education Media Network's Best Social Documentary Award in 1995. This film has been used by thousands of organizations and businesses to address and discuss prejudice, bias, and race. Part 2 of that film, Walking Each Other Home, won the Cindy International Film Festival's Silver Medal for Best Social Issues Award in 1998. In 2005, he directed and produced the film Last Chance for Eden, a 3-part documentary on sexism and racism. His latest film, If These Halls Could Talk, was released last year and deals with college students and their perspectives on race and racism. And in 1995, Oprah Winfrey did a 1-hour special on his life and work, which was watched by over 15 million viewers throughout the world. So now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving me a warm FDIC welcome to Mr. Lê Mun Hoa.
So, how did that feel, starting like that? Authoritative. Aha. And your name is? Peter.
Peter.
And what was authoritative about it?
You were controlling the environment, expecting that your silence would, without even, saying what you required, would reflect to us, and we would respect it.
Boy, I wished I was so prepared like that. What else was it like for anybody else? What was it like? What was it like for you? Your name is?
Michelle.
Michelle, what was it like for you?
We had my teaching from the start, so for me, we stood up front. We sort of command attention, and we were waiting for everyone else to sort of stop doing what they're doing to be ready for the
For getting ready for the presentation. And I waited for you, huh? Yeah.
And to be honest about it, I'm okay with that.
Oh, good, because actually I wanted to make sure that you were with me right there. So, what was it like for you when I was quiet?
My name's Shiv.
Hi, Shiv.
I noticed that everyone was quiet, so I looked up. I think that diversity also has to take into account different types, which includes the fact that I fidget a lot.
Yeah.
So, low-level ADHD. So I have to be fidgeting, or else, it's hard for me to focus.
Aha. Yeah. Well, I taught special ed, so I know perfectly. I was just like that when I was a kid, too. So thank you for letting me know. Can you hear that? Because I might not have ever guessed when he was working on his laptop or on his cell phone there, that I would never have guessed that was going on. So the only way I could find out is if I actually ask him, can't I? So anybody else, what was it like for you? Your name is?
Gloria.
Gloria. What was it like for you?
I was just waiting, seeing what was next. That's all. I'm just anticipating, waiting, seeing what you were going to do or say.
And little did you know that you were next. And this gentleman right here in the black shirt. Your name is? Mike. Mike, what was it like for you when I didn't say anything?
Puzzling.
Puzzling. What was puzzling about it?
I was just trying to figure out, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it.
What I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it, huh? So what are you used to having happen? The speaker immediately talks. Or maybe you might get a really incredible African-American man and go, hello! And then you'll all yell back, hello, right? But unfortunately, I'm not that African-American man today. So you were expecting perhaps I might say something immediately, and then what else might I do? Pop up those PowerPoints, right? Maybe even tell you what today's going to be all about. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about today that here you are at a diversity workshop. At least that's the topic, when I looked on here was. And I do something different, and some of you are uncomfortable. Or maybe going, this is kind of odd, what's up here, what's he trying to do? So I want you to think about it, that if in fact part of what diversity is about is doing something different, accepting and embracing differences, why couldn't you be open to what I was doing? Now when I did this at the United States Pentagon, one man yelled out, well, you look like you were unprepared. Ah. And you probably even noticed right now that I don't have anything that I'm reading. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote a book called The Art of Mindful Facilitation. And that is the art of being fully present. Can you hear that? The art of being fully present. This generation, I can borrow this? This generation that we have before us today is the most spiritual one I've ever seen. They are always doing this. And my son is constantly praying during dinner. So if you happen to have one of those, it'd be great if you turned it off, okay? So you don't have to multitask while you listen to me today. Now one quick thing. How many of you today, when you came in here today, you actually, how many of you sat next to somebody you knew? Now, I'm going to tell you something. With my brand new film, that's exactly what the students said when they come into classes. Everybody's sitting with who they know. Jesse Jackson said the most segregated time in America is on Sunday, and he's dead wrong. The most segregated time in America is at lunchtime. It is at lunchtime. And ladies and gentlemen, even today when I asked many of you to come up and take a look at my altar, many of you looked like you were glued to your seats. Some of you even thought, well, gosh, how do I even walk up there? It was like a sentence or a threat to walk up and take a look at my altar. Because the truth of it is, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot get to meet somebody seated where you are. You cannot. When President Clinton did the national dialogue on race, not one single person talked to each other. They simply talked to a panel. Then that panel went to President Clinton, and they talked to him about what happened. So I wrote a letter, and it was called Dear Bill. I wanted to be personal. So I wrote, Dear Bill, how interesting. We have a national dialogue on race, and nobody talks to each other. Then they all come to you, and you get to decide whether or not to continue them. Oh, Bill, what a wonderful plantation system you have set up. And of course, then he sent 2 people to talk to me. And now I'm on the no-fly list. No, but actually, what I'd like to share with you today is that the only way you're going to get to know somebody is actually, you're going to have to turn around. You're going to have to say hello to people. And not just this one. How are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. Boy, we call that an intimate conversation in the United States. That's why today, when every single person asked me how I was doing today, I told them, I'm tired, I'm on California time, I had a great Asian meal last night, or whatever that might be. Because if we are ever going to have a relationship with each other, we're going to have to get out of fine, yes, fine, how long the flight take. And then we call that a conversation to get to know you. We have also got to get past the idea that Black History Month and Martin Luther King, Cinco de Mayo and Cesar Chavez, Hanukkah, and all these different holidays we have are just the beginning of diversity. Can you hear that? Look at this entire room. Take a good look. Now you might say this room is highly multicultural, and I would challenge you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, unless you meet somebody, unless you get to know them, unless you value their culture and learn about their culture, and not when I talk about value, but more than that is that you make good use of their culture. Can you hear that? Because if we simply celebrate, it is not yet getting to know that person who they are. See, I do not believe the United States is multicultural. I think we're multi-holidayed. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today, I would like you to say hello. Really look at a person and say hello. Your left and right behind you also. Begin right now. Turn around, shake hands, say hello. Okay, have a seat. Have a seat. Boy, some of you look like you're running for election. Now, the question I want to have you think about is, why did I have you do that? But more importantly, what did it feel like to do this? Anybody, what did it feel like to do this? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a possibility of that. Anybody else? It was comfortable. Why was it comfortable? Yeah. Now, how many of you can notice in this room, and by the way, the microphone's not working right now as well, how many of you can notice that there were some people who looked really uncomfortable doing this? Raise your hand. I noticed some people who were uncomfortable doing this. And you know something? I'd like to show you something, how our children learn about racism. Oops. Hopefully you can see me from where you are. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the gentleman in the blue shirt all the way back there, who I talked to earlier. Good. Why don't you come on over to here? Let's give him a hand. I love volunteers. Okay. So what I'm going to have you just stand right where you are. Okay? When I touch my neck, you'll come up and sit next to me and not say a word. Okay? Great. Can I have a name? Okay. So when I ask students in my latest film, how did you learn about racism? This is how they learn from their parents. So I want you to imagine we're at a movie theater. And I'm here, I brought my kids to see The Avengers, okay? Now I'm sitting here with my kids and I'm going, oh my God, I can hardly wait to see this film. It is really good. Michael, don't take your sister's popcorn, okay? All right, now I know Mom doesn't know this is a really violent film, so I don't want you guys to say anything by the time we're done, okay? I can hardly wait for the film. It is going to be so good. Oh my God, you know, when I was younger, I saw all of these superheroes, and they were just... Don't do anything, just don't act. Just sit there like that. And that is how they learned about racism. Do you know what I'm talking about? Say it one more time.
Yes.
And how many times do you think this has happened to you?
Not severely, but multiple times.
Yes. I have done this exercise for about 10 years now, and every single African American male will say that they've had this experience, that people turn away. How many of you know what he's going through? Raise your hand. Please stand. You see, ladies and gentlemen, take a good look in the room. Take a really good look. And what I would like to propose to you is that you're only one question away to find out what people's lives are like. The work in diversity, perhaps the truth of the work is, please remain standing, is that these people are sitting right next to you. That you could assume that every single day that they come to work, that their lives might be very similar to yours, just getting from there to here. Or maybe, what's it like to go home from here and never know what their lives might be like to get to this room? The work, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that you don't know, but if they told you, would you believe them? And I strongly believe all over this country, people are scared to sometimes tell the story. Or as someone once said, the rejection or the fear that they may not even believe you. Do not make a mistake. Every single agency, every single block in this country is struggling with this issue. And what I would like to share with all the people who are standing and all the people who are sitting, I am George Zimmerman. And so are you. All of my life, since I was a child, I've been acculturated that black males are dangerous, with or without a hood. And every day I struggle with that tape. It comes up when I get scared, when I see images, and the other one, which is my own personal experiences. And those images are not simply of black men, but also of myself as an Asian man, and as I have of Latinos, of gays, of women, and the list goes on. And today, all I simply did was have you illustrate by simply asking one question. And what's it like when he has no one say to him, I moved away because you were black? So he has to make it up. Am I wearing something wrong? Is my perfume wrong? Did I say something? Did I do something? And all of those questions that go on inside of his head. Thank you. The other one that our parents taught us was this one. Honey, roll the window up, lock the door. And then the children look out what neighborhood you're talking about. Can you hear that? And that's also how. And so when they grow up and they come to schools and they see those same groups, and along with that, not only seeing those same groups, but then when they go to the workplace and they see those same groups and they have to be managers and supervisors, all those tapes are going on. I say that to you, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm here today. I've been introduced today as an Asian folkteller, filmmaker, etc. But what I want to tell you is this. I was a school teacher. I taught for 25 years special ed. So how did I come to do this? In 1985, an African American man broke into my mom's home, very close to this hour, and he shot my mother 5 times in the head. And my whole life changed. All the stereotypes that my father had told me about black men and white people who had taught my father about black men to teach us, all of those stereotypes permeated into the very heart of who I am today. It has been almost since 1985 years for me to get to this stage today. It has not been an easy journey. I have a hard time still believing that I'm standing in front of you. But fate would have it. I did a film called The Color of Fear to talk about the fear of color in the United States. How many of you have seen that film? My gosh, the rest of you should get out more often. But if you wish to see it, you can go on to my website. Cornel West calls it perhaps the best film in the 21st century on race. But ladies and gentlemen, that isn't about my film today. When my film came out, people ran across this country to tell everybody about the most incredible film on racism that this country had ever seen. There is no script. But that isn't what I want to tell you about today. Because as the film went on to Oprah Winfrey in 1995 and changed my whole life, soon, as a quiet Chinese teacher, I was asked by Gap to come do a presentation. And I tell you that because it changed my whole life. Because there was another gentleman by the name of Michael Smith. And what Michael Smith was, by the way, Michael Smith looked just like you. The gentleman right there. Raise your hand. Do you mind standing? It's Michael's brother. Okay. And what happened is, thank you. You could tell Michael was dressed beautifully. And what happened was, Michael told me, because he had worked in corporate America, and what he said to me was, Mama, what I want you to do is, I don't want you to wear your Chinese clothing, your Tibetan clothing, your kimono, because you don't want to let your clothes get in the way of your message. Can you hear that? It's another way of telling you, leave that part of yourself at home. And so what happened was, he said, I want you to wear a suit, I want you to wear laced shoes, and don't leave all that Chinese stuff at home. And so what happened was, I had to look around for a suit, I had to look around for a tie, and then I remember coming down the staircase, and my wife said to me, honey, you look incredibly uncomfortable. And I said, God, I do. And so what ended up is, when I got to Gap, I remember Michael looking at me and going, oh my God, didn't I tell you not to put on your Asian clothing? Oh my God, he was really upset with me. He said, tell you what, I'm going to do the PowerPoint, I'm going to do the presentation because I know how to talk to corporate America, and what I want you to do, Manoir, is I'll give you 2 minutes, you introduce the film, and I'll do all the talking. So when he got up, did his PowerPoint, he was great, and he did his talk, and he was great. But what I noticed when I was watching the audience was, I didn't see anybody that excited. Can you hear that? He really wasn't looking at the audience, he was just talking. And then he said, now the director of the film, Le Manoir, will tell you a little bit about the film, and then I'll continue on with the training. And I remembered I got up, and I had written just a few little things, and because I was so nervous, I had written them down. And I remember everybody was kind of staring at me like you might be looking at me today with my different clothing. And then I realized when people were looking at me how self-conscious I felt. And I was holding that piece of paper here like I am today. And then I tore it up. I don't know what made me do it. But I decided on that day that I was going to talk about what it was like for me to have to leave who I was behind. And what I said was this. From the moment I started school, I learned that having a Chinese accent was not being an American. I watched how the kids made fun of the Asian kids who came in and did this. Ching chong Chinaman. And what ended up is, I ended up not speaking Cantonese. I was beginning as a young child to learn it, but I learned that that was un-American. But I remembered more than that. You see my name up here as Le Manoir. It means he who writes. I became an author and a poet. My parents took 2.5 months to find my name. But on the day that I was born, on my birth certificate, my mother and father wrote the name Gary. God, I hate that name. Anybody know why he wrote Gary? Why did he put Gary instead of Le Manoir? Ah, in the most multicultural nation in the world that brags to Afghanistan and in Iraq that everybody's accepted and we have all these different cultures. Yet my name, Le Manoir, was not American enough. And how did my father get that? Because his name is Le Hua. And when he came here, the immigration officials changed it to Richard. Because he said that Le Manoir was difficult to pronounce. Now, I'm a nationally known phoneticist. I wrote the largest phonics program in the world. And I can tell you Le Manoir is far more easier to pronounce than Richard. Oh, it was anglicized. Then it became American. And that was just the beginning. I remember coming to class with a beautiful box of bak fan, which was steamed rice, siu gai, which was soy sauce chicken, lap chung, which was steamed pork, and I'm probably making some Asian people in there hungry right now. Yeah. And I had these beautiful colored chopsticks, and I had brought it to school. And they always had all these little cubby holes, you know what I mean? But I didn't trust anybody with my lunch, so I put it underneath my desk. And what happened is that some of the kids went, "Ooh, what's that smell? Ooh, what is that?" And I remember, even as a little child, I took that box and I hid it further and further underneath my coat that was on my desk. And I remember something that I will never forget to this day. That when all the children went out to lunch, very much like this hour right now, I took that box of food and I threw it in the garbage can. But what I didn't realize was that I threw far more than just my lunch. I threw away the beauty of my accent, of my Cantonese language. I threw away the beauty of my name. I threw away the voices and the stories of my ancestors. I had lost so much more. And what I am here today to tell you is that who I am is not Chinese New Year. Who I am is not just another symbol of Bruce Lee. But who I am and my people and my ways of seeing the world are just as American as Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Dwight D. Eisenhower. That even though sometimes it may appear as if I don't speak up when people are talking, the truth of it is, what I have learned since I was a child was to let others go first, to honor them, to listen to them. And when I watch in this culture that when people interrupt each other, I was learned that you do not interrupt people. But I remembered when I became a counseling student, and they thought that I showed promise. And so what they did was they gave me a client like this right here. And they put two supervisors on my left and right, and they had me work with my client. But while I was working with my client, they kept interrupting me. And each time they interrupted me, I stopped and said yes. And then he interrupted me again, I said yes. And at the end of the vignette, what they said to me was, "I'm sorry, we can't have you become a supervisor. You're not assertive enough." And I remembered that day, I felt so ashamed, like something was missing inside of me. And it was not until years later that I discovered that really deep inside of me, not one single person asked me if it was cultural. Can you hear that? If it was cultural. I work with companies all over the United States now to talk to them how differently when Asians come in for an interview, how it's so different. So they said to me, "Show us how it's different when Asians come in for interviews." And I said, "Well, let me show you an example." An Asian person may come into an interview, but what they'll say is something like this. "First of all, I want to thank you for having me here. Second thing I want to tell you is, I am here today because of Mary, John, Frank, and Harry. My team is incredible. They did so many wonderful things. I have one of the best teams. They have helped me get to where I am today. I would be nothing without them." Now let me show you how a person of Western culture comes in who might be white. "Hello, everybody. I have something to tell you. I set up 4 goals for my team. I really pushed this team. We had definitive goals. We had solutions that they had to work toward. They would be nothing without my guidance. I believe that I'm the best person for this job because I have the skills, the articulateness, and I also have the charisma. Thank you." Now, who do you think they give the job to? And what I work with companies on is, don't you want to have somebody who helps develop leaders so that they could see the leader in each person? Today, when I looked at each of you, it was not to do a trick. I looked at each of you because I wanted you to know that I saw you, that I see you. Not as a mass or a group of people I'm going to talk to today, but that I see you. And there were teachers along the way that looked at me and said, "I see you, Munwa. I see in your eyes. I see when you're drawing on your paper how creative. I saw you out in the yard playing. I saw how fast and how strong you are. I could see your eyes moving when we're talking, that you're paying attention to everything. Tell me more about you, Munwa. I'd like to know." And I carried that into my teaching. So when I worked with special ed kids, what I told them was, it's not that you can't learn. It's because we haven't figured out a way to teach you. Can you hear that? We haven't figured out a way to teach you. And so today, when I am with you and in front of you, I want to tell you is this. I am an American. My ghee, which was cut off when our people came here, I grew it back again. To tell you that my lineage and my connection to my people is still there, even though I was born in this country. I am here to tell you that our people, the Chinese people, under the Chinese Exclusionary Act, we were the only ones for 10 years that were excluded to not come into this country, which was left out this morning in the introduction, which affected our people. I want to tell you today that these beautiful eyes that I have are not lines. That my eyes are beautiful. And they are almond-shaped. And they come in all sorts of shapes. And when you write a line, and when I told the Disney studios, our people do not have lines for eyes, take a good look at us. Because 30% of the people in Japan still have eye operations because they want to look like white people. And God knows what poor Michael Jackson did with his skin to look more white. Poor George Zimmerman, who told the American press he was white and he was also Latino. Some part of my kiss, this voice I hear in this country is, be white, Wenhua. Get rid of your accent. Get rid of your clothing of your people. This is not my costume, ladies and gentlemen. It is the clothing of my people. And I also want to tell you this is, I know very clearly that if I came here dressed like this for an interview, that would be the farthest I would get. But I want to tell you this today. I look beautiful in the United Nations. How come I don't look beautiful here? And if, in fact, we are the most multicultural nation in the world, my name is just as beautiful and wonderful to pronounce as Dwight D. Eisenhower and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that this clothing that I wear carries my people. And that the language of my people of Cantonese and Mandarin is just as powerful and meaningful and as American as is English. I think that we should pass a law that it is un-American if you don't have an accent. And so in closing with you today, I want to tell you this. When I did The Color of Fear, and it became perhaps and won many awards, international awards, my father called me up that night after he had seen my premiere of Standing Room Only. And he said to me, my son, I don't want you to use your Chinese name. I want you to go back to your English name. Because I think you won't fit in. And I think that when America sees your film, they will kill you after they see what you have shown on screen. And I remember what I said to my father that night, and it was at midnight. I told my father that he gave me a beautiful name. That I wanted to know and have you know today, to say it loud and clear. Not only am I an American, but my name is Lei Munhua. My name is Lei Munhua. I thank you.
Questions?
Yes. Yeah.
For the sake of this audience, and not so much for you because I know you know better, you refer to Chinese New Year, and that's incorrect statement because, as you know, we have basically in the history of this world that we know of, two calendars. Gregorian calendar based on solar cycle, and lunar calendar based on moon cycle. Not only Chinese people, but also Koreans, and which I'm from, and I'm proud to be Korean American. This is the greatest country ever existed. thanks to the founding fathers of the country. It was a wonderful constitution. But also Japanese people and all over Asia, they celebrate the Lunar New Year. So I want to make a correction for the sake of this audience to civilize them that it is not a Chinese New Year. It is Asian New Year or Lunar New Year. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And by the way, as he was sharing with you, your name is?
Young Ho Chang.
Good. And what does your name mean?
Gong Ho's brother, Young Ho.
Good. So you said that you were Korean, am I correct?
Yes.
Were you born in Korea?
Yes, I was.
Good. So ladies and gentlemen, how many of you know this gentleman? Great. So could you please tell me how you say good morning in Korean?
안녕,
No, not you.
하십니까?
Not you. So the rest of you in this room, could you please share with me how to say good morning in Korean? Not guessing because he just said it. Ladies and gentlemen, please tell me if you could say, you might be able to, but don't you notice it's another Asian person? Please, ladies and gentlemen, if you could please tell me how to say thank you in Korean. No, that's in Chinese. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear this. Would you mind standing? Yes, of course. Why don't you come on up here so they could see two tall Asian men? Yes. But what I want you to have to notice is a number of other Asian people had to answer this. So is he standing here with me, my brother? Hey. Man, I've been trying to grow that for a long time. But
It just keeps growing.
Yeah, I know. So what I'd like you to hear is this. Why did I ask you if you could say good morning and thank you in Korean? Why did I ask you this? Yes.
And my thought would be if it's the greatest country in the world, we would learn each other's differences. And we would become more assimilated with each other.
Did you hear what she said? That if in fact, if it was the greatest nation in the world and we were multicultural, then why wouldn't we be wanting to learn about each other? Ladies and gentlemen, reason why I brought this up to you is I am now going to be 65 this year. In all of my years as an educator, therapist, and filmmaker, I have never had people in this country ask me a single thing about being Chinese. Neither any words. In fact, somebody once said to me, so what are the people in China doing today? And I said, I'm not Sarah Palin, I can't see that far. Or maybe I've had this happen to me. Do you know John Wong in New York? And I said, I don't know. Do you know John Smith in California? You see, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. But will you want to get to know us? Or will you simply assume under that Richard M. Nixon title that we are both Asian and that's it? I can tell you unequivocally that Korean and Chinese are very different.
Yes.
See that? The question for you is, do you know what that difference is? The question to you is, are you curious? Someone once asked me at a recent workshop, what's it like to be Chinese in the United States? And this is what I said. Inconvenient. And then this is what they asked me next. So, what time did you get in? Neither wanting to ask me, what did I mean by inconvenient? And I can guarantee you that I'm born in the United States and he's born in Korea. I'm born in Oakland, California. How many times I hear this? My God, Mr. Lee. Shake my hand. You speak such good English. Where'd you learn it from? How many of you know exactly what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. Please stand. Yeah. Or maybe this, that perhaps this one simple phrase. Would you mind standing, please? My God, you speak such good English. Where did you get it? Where did you learn that from? Have you ever had anybody tell you that?
No.
Now, why do you think he didn't? Because he's white. Or maybe I'll give you another one. Well, your name is?
John.
John, oh my gosh, I've been seeing your work. Oh my God, you are a credit to your people. Or maybe this one. John, you're so articulate and educated.
There you go.
Which is what Joe Biden said to the President of the United States. And he did not know why he was upset. All of those phrases distinguish me from being an American. And they hurt. Or maybe when I get on the airplane with Les Manoir, the stewardess does this. Hello, Mr. Smith. Welcome. Good to have you on American Airlines. Oh, have a seat. And what that feels like. Or to be invisible when you're standing in line. I don't know how many times that has happened. And so today, when I'm sharing with you, is this the greatest nation in the world? I think every nation believes it's the greatest nation in the world. But I believe in that speech of Martin Luther King who said, I have a dream. Many people forget the part that he said before he said the speech. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I have a check. And I am cashing in on America today. I am cashing it in for this country to live up to the Bill of Rights and the United States Constitution. Because in the inception of this country, my dear brother, when it said that all men were created equal, they did not include women or people of color, and definitely not Asians. How did we ever get the vote? It took years. It took the blood and the hearts, and for women who were beaten and humiliated to be able to vote in this country. The 1960 Voting Rights, Civil Rights Law was to give us these rights. You see, history has a tendency to have selective amnesia. But I did not forget the Japanese internment, who were Japanese Americans. And ladies and gentlemen, we interned the Japanese because we were afraid that they would be sympathetic toward the Japanese. Oh, but we forgot to ask Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Dwight D. Eisenhower what their ethnicity was. Dwight D. Eisenhower is of German ancestry. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is Austrian German. Why did we not imprison the commander and the President of the United States for fear they might be sympathetic? We took away everything they had. The best, most beautiful wine country in California belonged to Japanese. And the beautiful Japanese tea garden, one day it belongs to a Japanese family, and one day they decided to put a little plaque there. And they invited that family member, the father, to come to be honored that day when they put a little plaque in the Japanese tea garden in California to honor his family. And he looked at the plaque and he said, I don't want it. Because this was my garden. This was my property. And I do not want you or anyone else to forget what happened. And I was here today, not that I don't believe this is a great country, but like Martin Luther King, I want us to live up to those words. Because assimilation to me has felt like accommodation. Every part of me. And when I came here today, it's to tell you we still have a long way to go to make this a great country. And it will not happen because we have one black president. It will happen because each and every one of you must remember the history that took us to get to this room, and that even at this very hour, we are still having to fight for those rights to be seen. The Arizona law has hidden in its law that all multicultural classes in the United States be eliminated. Most people do not know that. And all I can tell you today is this. Martin Luther King would be crying today. And some students have told me if it was not for multicultural classes, they would not be in college. They would not stay unless they could see their people there, to have their history be heard. And I'm here to tell you today, my name is Le Manoir, and I will not go silent. I read in everybody's, when they ask me to autograph their paper, what I always write is this: the dream lives on or dies with each of us. And that is Martin Luther King's dream. When we work for it, when we work towards it to happen every day, not just a holiday, but to something that we each and every one of us have to participate in. And that is why I thank my brother to remind this whole group that we're a proud people. And every group in here, when each of you become the President of the United States, and can be, is when we will have achieved what we were looking for. Martin Luther King's dream wasn't just for black people to become president. It was because for all of us. Whether you were Muslim, disabled, or gay, you had a right to be a part of this country. That's what I thought the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was all about. I thank you. Let's give our volunteer a hand too.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. But it certainly was an awakening of our minds and our thoughts about not only how diverse we are as a country, but how, just looking around this room, diverse the FDIC is. And certainly, you know, you look at your neighbors sometimes and you take things for granted, and you take them for granted, and you don't realize that we all, you know, come from various backgrounds and have various experiences and cultural differences. That is very important for us to recognize those differences and to accept them and to value each other. So we thank Mr. Le Manoir for taking us through this experience. I almost wish we could just have gone through the whole day of this, because it just doesn't stop with an hour or, you know, in this presentation. So I hope that you take away from this, you know, these thoughts that he has given us to say, yes, we are a very important to this country, and that we do bring a lot to the table because of who we are and where we come from. So I thank each of you for taking the time to come and be here and to experience this with us. This is another one of the programs of our Diversity Education Series. Our next program will be next month on June 19th at 11 o'clock. And it will be the program recognizing and valuing our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees. So please come and join into the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. I believe we do have refreshments outside. We do? So please join us, and thank you again for coming.